Riba, usury, lending money at interest. In Britain, the company Wonga used to lend money at interest rates of 4,214%. Now that company is failing and can no longer make loans. Wonga have never been popular. Loans at that steep rate of interest seem somehow wrong, although really, if the borrower knows what they're buying and it's a willing transaction between the two informed parties, why would it be wrong? In Islamic law, it is wrong. Quran 2.275-8. Those who consume interest cannot stand on the day of resurrection except as one stands who is being beaten by Satan into insanity. That is because they say trade is just like interest, but Allah has permitted trade and has forbidden interest. So whoever has received an admonition from his Lord and desists may have what is past, and his affair rests with Allah. But whoever returns to dealing in interest or usury, those are the companions of the fire. They will abide eternally therein. Allah destroys interest and gives increase for charities, and Allah does not like every sinning disbeliever. Indeed, those who believe and do righteous deeds and establish prayer and give charity will have their reward with their Lord, and there will be no fear concerning them, nor will they grieve. O you who have believed, fear Allah and give up what remains due to you of interest, if you should be believers. Quran 3.130. O you who have believed, do not consume usury doubled and multiplied, but fear Allah that you may be successful. Quran 4.161. And for their taking of usury, while they had been forbidden from it, and their consuming of the people's wealth unjustly, and we have prepared for the disbelievers among them a painful punishment. So, trade is okay, but you are not allowed to lend money at interest. Christians used to believe this too. That's why they insisted that Jews do the work of banking and money lending. But they've come to their senses, and now Christians are perfectly happy to borrow and lend with interest. Why is interest needed? Because if a stranger wants to borrow from me, there needs to be some reason why I would lend. The offer of you get more back than you lended is just such an incentive. Christians have decided to simply ignore their previous aversion to interest. Muslims have not. But people are ingenious, and Muslims have found a way around this. Here's how. In the West, if you want to set up a business, you get a loan from the bank and pay them back 8%, for example. So, if you borrow £100,000, you'll be paying back £8,000 per year in interest. Under Islamic law, if you borrow £100,000, you pay no interest. Sounds great, yes? But banks are not generous, and instead of interest, they will want a share of your profits. So which way is best? It sounds like it might be much of a muchness, but think about this. Western banks could also lend against a share of profits, and they don't. So from the point of view of banks, this method is inferior. The business has the same option. They could offer a share of their business in exchange for finance. But typically, people would want such a large share of the business that the business owner doesn't prefer that route. What about mortgages? The lender owns part of the house and the borrower pays rent on that part. The outcome is pretty much the same as a Western-style mortgage. The wording on the contract is different, and Allah is completely fooled. What about student loans? There we see a problem. The lender cannot own a part share of the student. So many young Muslims who might have benefited from a university degree have to leave education unless they have rich relatives. With the Western system, a poor but clever student can earn an advanced degree and a much better job than he would otherwise have had. There has been talk of halal loans, but no action, and a few people believe that the existing scheme is halal. But this has become an immense, self-inflicted barrier to advanced education for Muslims. The ban on interest, which is unavoidable as is there in the Quran, has been crippling the Islamic economies for centuries and will continue to cripple Islamic businesses forever because Islam cannot be reformed. And for a long time it crippled the economies of Christendom, together with a ban on charging a fee for changing money between currencies from 325 AD onwards. And this persisted until the 16th century, but from 1545 onwards interest became legal and European economies took off like rockets. If you loan someone a house, both you and they would expect you to pay rent. Likewise a car or any other valuable thing. I really don't understand why anyone would think it was different for a bag of coins or whatever. Interest is just rent. Now consider the position of the person saving money in an economy where there is a moderate amount of inflation, say 8%. If the bank cannot pay interest, then the saver has to watch the value of his savings dwindle, halving in value in 5 years. But if the bank can pay interest, then the saver can keep up with inflation. So in economies that allow interest, there is an incentive to the saver to keep money in a bank from where it can be loaned to businesses at a rate of interest. And this helps to develop the economy. That is why Sharia-compliant banks so often find dodges and wheezes to appear to comply with the Quran. Perhaps they didn't know about inflation in 650 AD, because inflation changes the situation completely. If I lent you £100 for 5 years, and 5 years later you pay me back that £100, and if inflation has been running at 8%, then what I get back is worth half of what I loaned. Is that fair? Yet under Islamic law, you would have to find a ruse or subterfuge to avoid that unfairness. Why not just deal with it in the obvious, fair and straightforward way? Because Muhammad told them that they cannot. Another issue is gambling, which is forbidden to Muslims. So it's clear that, for example, roulette is forbidden. But all business activity is a gamble. You spend money now in the hope, but not the certainty, that you will make a profit in future. Business is a gamble. And whether a particular business activity is seen as trade or gambling depends on which religious scholar you consult. But still, if Muslims want to burden themselves and cripple their economy, that's their decision.